So it should come as no surprise to anybody, but women are definitely a minority at the game table. So I sat down with my friend Erin to talk about if there's any differences between how men treat the game as opposed to how women treat the game when it comes to playing it in a more competitive mindset. So strap yourselves in, sit down, grab something warm to drink, and let's see how women experience competitive gaming. My name is Tanya, otherwise known as the War Mistress. I've painted some minis, I've played some games, and I'm on a mission to be nice and roll dice. Welcome back for another episode of Be Nice and Roll Dice, and I'm here today with Erin, and we're going to talk a little bit about what it's like to play Warhammer with a competitive mindset. So thank you so much for being on the show today, Erin.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so how did you get started playing Warhammer 40K?
Well, it's been around me for quite a while. I am the cliche. I came in here through my husband. I've only been playing for about a year now. I probably would have started playing earlier. I've always loved games, board games, video games, you name it. But I kind of avoided it because I didn't want to step on his toes, or I was worried I was treading into his territory. But the beginning of COVID, I started assembling some Eschers. He picked up Necromunda, and I loved assembling them. And then I started painting. And before I knew it, I had codexes in front of me in the game, and he was teaching me everything. And I realized I wasn't stepping on his toes. He was quite happy to have me in there with him. So that's kind of how it started. I have a bit of a all-in personality. I don't like to do things halfway. So fast forward a year later, and I've got 2 armies on the go and looking at trying to get into tournaments once everything opens up, and I'm just having a really good time with it.
So you're on like a few of the same forums as me, so I know that you kind of approach playing the game at least in the same sort of mindset as me. Like, you want to be able to hold your own, maybe not like to the point where you want to chase the meta or like, maybe go outside of your comfort zone too much, but what is your local meta like? Like, was this a natural progression to play this way, or was this something that you thought, like, from the very beginning, like, yeah, I want to win?
Well, I mean, my experience has been, I think, very skewed by COVID because it's been kind of an odd year, and living right next to Toronto, we've been locked down through a lot of it. When I first picked it up, like I said, I'm all in. I tend to go over the top. My last hobby was home brewing. Now I own a brewery. So I said I was going to completely dial it back and just have fun and play a little bit. The second I realized there was some strategy here and some learning, I could feel myself kind of going that way where I knew I wanted to play a bit more competitively. And I was kind of instantly tied into what would be like a low-key competitive community through my husband. He's spent years fostering kind of relationships with, he likes to call them his socially adjusted nerd circle. So I'm kind of spoiled by being able to step right into that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I don't really know what my larger meta is like so much, but I know that there's a lot of people kind of just chilling and having fun with it. And then some people that are hitting up tournaments, kind of focusing on the more competitive side. And it's kind of where I want to land. I mean, I don't have any dreams of hitting a top table. I don't have the time or, I don't ever see myself there, but I want to be able to go to a tournament, hold my own, maybe finish mid-pack someday and just have a good time with it.
Yeah, so I think that our goals are very, very similar, actually, because I don't ever think that I will get to, like, top table. I mean, maybe, you never know. But for now, my goal is to, like, jump from the 2 wins, 3 losses into the 3 wins, 2 losses, like those baby steps. So that's my goal. But I sort of, because my husband is not competitive, like, at all, right? It's really funny because he's actually quite good at the game. So a lot of the competitive people who play in this area, when they're testing their lists, he's one of the first people that they come to because he is quite good at the game. He just wants to play the game his way, and normally that is sort of like counter meta. So I came to want to play competitively because the other people around me play competitively. Like we have one of the top forces of the hive mind players in our area, and just seeing how far that he can take it, and seeing how far he can take this faction that is like, let's be honest, it's like almost trash tier. And he, he goes out and does these events, has fun, and he's like a well-known person. He's got all of these friends, and I was like, yeah, I think that that's a community that I want to get into. Not realizing that, like, in order to play at that level, you got to put like hours and hours and hours in every week. So yeah, it's funny because in my local meta, it's like most people are competitive, but my husband is not one of them, and I find that really, really funny. So do you do like the test playing of your list?
Test playing as in running through what I'm doing. And yeah, we're finally opening up back here again. So I'm hoping to get some more runs in, but yeah, I've had one list that I've kind of been working on and evolving, and I finally got it kind of to where I think I want it. I'm just fine tuning the edges now.
Mm-hmm.
So I was getting to play with a small handful of people, which was great because I've realized so much of what I need to learn now isn't even necessarily my army. It's everybody else's army so that I can actually strategize properly. But for the last 2 or 3 months, I've been playing a lot of my husband's armies. And he's been great to learn from, and he's a lot of fun, but he is very competitive. He won't tell you that he is, but he is. And he plays some hard armies. But that said, on my side, that's not a complaint. I don't want to sit there and have somebody let me win and not, give me a bit of a hard time to get in.
Yeah.
I want to learn. So I expect him to kick my ass thoroughly for a little bit longer, as long as he's explaining kind of why he's kicking my ass so thoroughly as we go.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So I thought maybe we could touch a little bit on like how competitive wargaming might be something like why might competitive wargaming be something that a lot of women might enjoy. So I like competitive wargaming because of the social aspect. I like playing war games because I like being at the table with my friends and like the banter and stuff like that. But I like to go to tournaments so that I can meet new people, play new armies, and all of that. I find as like a busy woman, I've got multiple jobs. I do content creation. I don't have kids. I can't even imagine what my life would be like if I had kids. Wargaming for me, it gives me something like outside of my house that I can, when you can, it gives me something outside of my house that I can look forward to doing, where I can forget about all the chores and forget about all of the things that are going on in my life. But what are some of the reasons why you like it?
There's a few, and I mean, the whole subject of why there isn't more women in wargaming is such a huge one. I've put so much thought into this, and I could go on so many tangents, but to kind of sum why I like this, I know we've talked and I've kind of shared, the last few months for me especially have been insane. I've got 3 kids. I own my business, and right now with COVID and everything, I'm working 70, 80-hour work weeks. I have a side fitness hobby. There's a lot going on. I'm a really busy person, but I need those pockets of time for me. And Warhammer's been great because it is so all-consuming. If I'm feeling energetic and I have and I want to move around, then we can play a game. If I just need to turn the brain off and kind of shut out the world and pretend I'm not stressed, I can paint or I can assemble. Or if I want to climb into there's the brain. Want to climb into bed, there's a book there to read. And so there's just so many facets. And I like to, as much as I do love playing the game, I like to joke that every time I play the game, I decide I hate the hobby. And then after 10 minutes of, that little bit of salt there, there's just so much you can learn. And you want to go back because what can I do better? And how can I continue to evolve? And there's just so much space for growth and so much to it that, yeah, there's a lot to bring you in. And I think there's a lot in that many women out there would identify with. And when we say women are too busy and that's why they can't, Instead, we saw it as, here's something for you where you can turn off that busy and take that 1 hour at the end of the night and make it all about you. We might see it in a slightly different light.
That's totally it. Like when I'm wargaming, I'm at the table, like literally nothing else exists except me trying to figure out how to win this mission. And for me, it's actually just a really positive way to sort of decompress. I actually miss having game nights so much because I didn't realize how much I really needed them until I couldn't have them anymore. Another thing that I really like about playing the game is the mental resiliency that it has created within me, right? Because when I first started playing, and I really only started playing more seriously about 23 months ago, I only know because I only know it's exactly 23 months because I had to figure it out for another project. But so I haven't been playing that long. But when I first started playing, I was so bad at this game, like so incredibly bad. And then like as soon as you take on that competitive mindset, you actually lose more because you're seeking out more experienced players. At least I am, because I want the like after game strategy talk. Not saying that you can't have that with somebody who doesn't approach the game competitively, but it's just something that I find it's really helped me, one, learn the game a lot faster, but two, really get over like how bad it feels to lose. And I'm still like, I can still be pretty salty. I'm not gonna lie. Like if I get stomped really bad on the table, I might get salty for a little bit. But as I continue on this journey to like play the game at a more competitive level, I find that the salty episodes are getting like shorter and shorter and shorter. And I think that that saltiness probably exists in more aspects of my life. I just never really like admitted it to myself until I started playing this game.
Yeah, I used to tell myself I wasn't competitive. That's not who I am. And I've realized over the past few years, I am like ridiculously competitive. Yeah. And I think I never wanted to admit that to myself because then I'd have to deal with it. So yeah, here we are.
Do you think women don't like to admit that to themselves? Like, do you think it's something that we're socially brought up to like, oh no, like women aren't supposed to be competitive? Or
I think there's a lot of things that, you know, being competitive, there's so many things. And I feel like women are naturally sometimes a little bit more self-critical, and society is so much more critical of, you know, women and emotional reactions and portrayals that 100%, I think. And, you know, if a guy gets a little angry, is like, oh, this is stupid, and then, you know, walks away, but, you know, kind of cracks a little laugh afterwards, there's probably a little bit more forgiveness than if a woman does. So 100%.
I could see that for sure. I have walked away from a table angry before. Yep.
I find I walk away from the table angry more with my husband than other people, because other people I'm like, suck it up. And with my husband, I can be like, why would you do that? Why did you? Yeah. No, but,
for me, I get salty, especially when people start making like underhanded comments. You know, I've only had it happen a couple times, but it makes me really mad. Yeah, and I don't know if like everybody, like I feel like it's something that men just tend to have built into their social relationships, is that kind of like one-uppedness and like trying to get under people's skin. Like I feel like that's just part of the way that they're competitive. I don't necessarily think that that's something that's like ingrained in women. I think that might be why I take it a bit more personally.
It could be the tone in which it's coming across too, or a difference in how it's expressed maybe against you versus them. See, I've been pretty lucky when it comes to my actual gaming experiences. Owning a business, I've been terrified to get COVID, because if I have to shut the doors to my business for 2 weeks, I don't know what I'd do. So we've been very, very sequestered. So the few public games I've had have mostly been in our house. So getting to pick and choose the audience and who's there, I've kind of been spoiled by they're always having the right people around who don't make comments. I had some jokes thrown my way that I didn't necessarily love, but in the game setting, I'm pretty lucky that way. Yeah. It'll change soon, hopefully soon.
Yeah, in general, my local game group is really good. They're really understanding. They really wait in general until there's like a relationship built between me and them before they start making those jokes, right? Because I feel like the jokes are like the table banter. I love table banter. That's like my favorite thing about this game. But I feel like you can't necessarily have that with somebody you're not entirely sure where they're at, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And I think that's kind of been a challenge in some of the groups I've been a part of, because in a few different groups that I'm kind of interacting with, I'm the first female there. And nobody's quite sure. Some people think, oh, maybe she's going to react to this. I feel like sometimes I'm almost treated with kid gloves. Sometimes I'm challenged. It's been an interesting, it's an interesting experience to wade into.
Yeah. Do you find that there's any empowerment in being the only woman in the room?
Empowerment. I think, this is something for me that I deal with in my job and in the games. I often find myself too in hobbies and situations that are more male dominated. So it's kind of a theme I've had through my life. I don't know if I feel empowered being the only female in the room. I think sometimes I feel almost a little bit more nervous because I'm conspicuous until I can kind of draw that group in. When I feel empowered is when I can bring more women into the room. And that's what I love. I love when I can watch the community around me build and see more women.
Mm-hmm.
I don't give a lot of thought to it when I'm just the only girl in the room. And I'm so used to it because that's my job every day. It's me and a bunch of dudes. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I actually I went part-time at my 9-to-5 job, but it is also a male-dominated well, I don't want to say career, but it's a male-dominated job. So I understand the problems, but also some of the benefits that come along with that. Do you think that because you're in a male-dominated career that helps you with dealing with any stresses at the table?
100%. Like, I feel like in beer, it took me a long time to find my voice. I thought I was this strong, outspoken woman who always stood up for herself. And then it took me like 6 years into that career. I was like, oh, I'm not sticking up for myself at all, really. And learning how to find that voice and that speak and just being able to adapt and find myself comfortable, and even being comfortable in calling out shit for shit. So I think in Warhammer, I realized quickly that while a lot of the community was great, there is also some fairly extreme toxicity out there. And I was ready to start meeting it head on almost instantly. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's funny too. I mean, sort of to derail a little bit out of like competitive play, but it like into online spaces. Do you find that the online spaces are different than your in-person spaces?
yes, 100%. And I am the kind of person that believes firmly in calling it out when I see it. So when I was in these groups, and my husband and some of my friends were like, Erin, you have to stop. When I saw misogyny, I would comment right away. And I've stopped interacting as much. I did a little bit today, but in the online forums, because I find they're so toxic, like overwhelmingly. And I was okay having that banter. And every time I did react to somebody on an online forum, at least one person would message me thanking me, which was what kept me going for a bit. But it got really out of hand when I got sent some really violent threats against myself and my business, and started thinking, I don't need someone to show up at my brewery and try to light it on fire. So I was shocked it went that far.
Yeah.
But yeah, the online stuff can be really super toxic, but you're faceless and behind a computer screen. So it's a great place to be a tough guy.
Mm-hmm. And that might be another reason why women might want to try competitive wargaming is if you've only ever experienced the wargaming community from an online space, you may not understand like the differences that go on in the cultures between the two. I mean, I'm not going to say that competitive wargaming, everybody in there is an angel, but in general, the people who are playing this game at that level are going to have fairly decent social skills, and a lot of them are really big enthusiasts for the game anyway, so they just really want to bring a lot of people in. I have never had, ever, a misogynistic comment in person. All of my problems have been with dickheads on the internet.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me. Most of my in-person interactions have been great. A couple of the people I'm learning the most from are people who I'd consider to be really competitive, and they're super chill and really, really great to work with. I've only had a very few face-to-face negative interactions. I had one dude tell me to my face that he didn't want me around because it kind of broke up the bro vibe, to which I just kind of rolled my eyes and said, that's fine. I'm here. Sorry. I'm not going anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, definitely much better in person. I'd agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow I feel like the more competitive, in my very limited experience, have almost been the best people to learn from and to work with.
I'm going to agree with that. From having played games with some of the top players in the world, you will lose, but you'll have a blast, and you'll never feel like you're being judged. And afterwards, they'll usually run you through what you could have done better, right? It's actually a really crazy experience to play a game, even at a tournament. Playing a game with somebody who is like top in your area, top in Canada, top in the world, even at a tournament, these players will help you.
Yeah.
You know, they will ask you, like, do you maybe want to talk that out, or you know what you could do instead, and you know what, if you approach it even at a tournament when they're trying to win, even if you approach that like it's a learning experience, it is really incredible to have those interactions with those top players. I playing with players like that has made me love this game, honestly.
That's nice. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to actually hitting up a tournament and having more experiences like that. I'm still trying to wrap my head around the idea of playing out 3 games in a single day. It feels like it's a lot of games.
It is.
I'm getting my ass whipped 3 times in a row might be an experience, but yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what it's like out there and having some fun with
it. Mm-hmm. So for people who've not ever done competitive wargaming before, you kind of get this like brain funk at the end of the first day, and you're like, what are my rules again? And you're like asking your opponent, and your opponent's like, I don't know, they're your rules, right? And I think everybody kind of gets that. The top players, however, they practice for that, right? And that's why they play their list over and over and over again, is so that they can basically play with autopilot on, so they don't get that. But you know, the rest of us, you can get pretty foggy up there at the end of the day. Yeah.
Push the model, and yeah, I can only imagine.
This isn't like a specifically like female thing, but a really cool benefit to playing competitively is that it gives you a reason to complete your army.
Yeah. See, and I hear that a lot of people get kind of inspired to paint, or I love painting. I love assembling. So even without, like, if I could never play, I would still build all the armies just to, well, not all of them, not rich, but just to build them. Just for, I don't know, it's so much fun. And that's the biggest problem with both me and my husband being into Warhammer, and now a couple of our kids too. Our house looks like a plastic museum. There's no adult left in that house.
My husband and we insured our Warhammer 40K collection.
That's amazing.
For $40K.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's actually not a bad idea.
It's not actually, like, in our province, you can't actually insure toys or collectibles under your standard house insurance. So, you know, we had to get extra because we're stupid. Like, our collections are stupid big.
We were joking. So we have now, like, I live in an old farmhouse. I'm a Canadian cliche. We literally live in the middle of the woods. So we have this one basically big giant room is the layout of our house. And there's now a game table smack dab in the middle of it. And there's times where I think shouldn't, but you live once and who cares? Who's judging you on the game table in your family room, right?
Well, so we have a 2-bedroom townhouse, and as we're moving in, we're like, yeah, you know, like there's the master bedroom. It's a lot bigger than the other bedroom, and then we're like, the bed's going in the smaller room. That master bedroom is becoming the game room. So yeah, we were on the same page there. Yeah. So game day. Is there anything that you could? I know you've not ever been to like a tournament before, but are there any things specifically about tournaments that you most are looking forward to?
I think just having multiple experiences in one day, you know, so you have one game against this one army, maybe it doesn't pan out the way you want, but then you get to kind of flip around and try something different. Seeing everybody's armies, seeing how people play. I'm looking forward to meeting more people. I'm hoping that will be a good aspect too. You know, the whole experience, I love throwing myself into things like full throttle. So to me, this just sounds like a lot of fun. And yeah, I just want to experience it and then kind of decide where to go from there. So I know we have one biggish one.
The bigger tournaments are like an experience, especially ones like, and you'll learn also like which ones in your area are like the infamous ones, right? Like all your gaming friends will be like, that's the one that you have to go to. And in my area, that is the boardroom brawl. And that one is like an experience. Like the terrain is amazing. The people are amazing. The TO is amazing. And there's just usually not that many spots. So you have to like secure one. But for me, like on top of, also the parties. Like if you like to like drink with friends, like some of these tournaments are crazy. I mean, just say. But one of the things that I love about tournaments is seeing all the hobby. Yeah. And it's something that people don't talk about very often, right? Like you think I go to a tournament, I go and I play games and that's it. But like in a lot of cases, sportsmanship and best overall, which is a blend of sportsmanship, your general score, and best painted, those two things are usually what get the biggest prizes at these tournaments, at least in my area, right? Like best sportsmanship, you're usually walking away with like a box set at least, you know, like you're getting something good. But on top of that, the hobby, the conversions, the paint, all of it, you will not see cooler hobby than at a tournament.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that aspect. I think a lot of the guys I've been playing with are fairly talented painters and and just seeing what they've done with some of their models, and it's inspiring. So I'm definitely looking forward to that in a larger scale. I know all my buddies go to Berry Bash every year because that's not too far from me. So that'll be one of the first on my radar. And like I said, I like to go all in. So the second LVO is going again. I won't do well, but I look forward to being part of it.
Yeah. Shout out to my best friend Scarcast for the Berry Bash. I will make it someday. Someday. Yeah.
I guess it's not happening. It would normally be this month, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it's usually like end of February, early March. It is not happening this year. Maybe next year? I know he's like chomping at the bit to like get it going again, so yeah.
Well, I will be there.
That's amazing. I'm gonna try my best to get out there. I have like one last thing that I want to talk to you about. So one of like my I don't know, it seems kind of petty maybe, but like one of my favorite things about being a woman in a competitive setting is like throwing dudes off their game. You know, like especially like dudes have been around for a while and they like get to the table and they're like at a tournament and they're like expecting it to be other dudes, and then they walk up to the table and it's not. Sometimes the look on their face is like enough to just like feed me for the entire day. Have you ever experienced that yet?
No, because I've only played games with people who I knew, and my husband's the kind of group that I've wormed my way into quite effectively, they would come by the brewery I own all the time. So I already knew all the guys to different degrees, but knew them fairly well. So I haven't had that moment yet. But yeah, I look forward to bouncing over to a table and saying hi and playing the game. And
yeah. I also love it because you have one of those names that like doesn't necessarily scream woman too, right? It's going to be amazing when you get to that table and get to like feed off of that look. It usually dissipates really quickly. Like usually the guy like settles into it right away once he realizes that, you know, you're just a wargamer. But yeah, I love it. I don't know what it is. Is that like petty? Is that salty?
No, I mean, as a parallel in beer, there's a competition they do. It's the Iron Brewer. It's done by the Master Brewers Association, where you just get all these ingredients and you make a beer. But anyways, I, for years, did the Iron Brewer. And now there's many more women in beer, which is awesome. But I'd walk into the room and I'd be the only female there. And the guys would always make assumptions, I feel like, because I was a one girl. And I still remember the first year I did it, I had to share a table with a guy who was head brewer at a fairly well-known brewery. And he, you know, he was so excited. There was a girl there and he took me under his wing and he was going to teach me all these things. And it was really cute that I was trying. So it felt really good when I won.
You can take your patronizing ass with good intentions and you can stuff it.
Yeah, I know he was well-intentioned, but, you know, don't judge a book from its cover. So, yeah, I have had those experiences in other settings. So I'm sure it'll be similar here because 40K is even more male-dominated than beer by far.
Yeah. So. Whenever I sit down and I won't hold you up too much longer, but whenever whenever I sort of get the opportunity to work with another content creator, I usually like to ask them what their demographics are. Have I talked to you about this?
We've chatted a little bit, but not in that would be something I would love to know. Yeah. I'd be super interesting to really break it down. I mean, I feel like you can kind of get an idea. I listen to a lot of podcasts and I absorb a lot of content. Yeah, and you get an inkling.
Okay, so there's like a range and it goes for podcasts, YouTube, Instagram, and that's basically all of the platforms that I've sort of talked to people about this. What do you think the range is?
In proportion?
Yeah. Like, what do you think the percentage of women consumers of content is? You can even go like on platforms, like on Instagram. What do you think is like?
Instagram, I think would be, maybe I could be wrong, but it's building really fast. Maybe 40% women? More? 50? Or am I way too high?
You're way too high.
Okay. It's because I'm biased. I follow so many.
So I have like a pretty good female demographic on my Instagram, which is 110% wargaming, right? Like I don't really have D&D stuff and anymore. I will paint the odd thing, but for the most part, I am all Warhammer 40K and a little bit of AOS, and my demographics are 9% women.
Wow, actually, that shocks me that it's that low on social media. And by the way, what you do, and I know I've said this to you, but I'll say it on this forum too, I love what you're doing. And the entire approach you take is great. And it's nice to have other women, you know, opening that door. So, but anyways, I'll digress from that. But yeah, that's shocking. It's that
so
low.
Sweet. Yes, but so that's really good. Okay, I haven't really talked to a lot of other Instagram people just because not so many people tailor to 40K. But what do you think for YouTube and podcasting? What do you think the demographic range that I have found is?
Well, if Insta's that low, the rest has got to be abysmal. Maybe 5% YouTube and maybe 2 or 3% podcasts.
So podcasts are between 0.5 and 1% female.
Oh.
And YouTube is between 1 and 2%.
Huh. So, And I feel like there's this inherent belief people have that it's because wargaming's not for women and women don't like violent stuff and I feel that that's not at all the reason. And as we see this hobby evolve, we'll see, like you look at video games that are 50-50 now, I think we'll see that too.
Mm-hmm. I think that what is working against wargaming, especially 40K, is the amount of time that it takes, right? Because a lot of the women who are really starting to get into it are mid-20s to like mid-40s, right? Like, what's going on in a lot of women's lives in that age, right? You're raising your family. You have a job. You're doing all this stuff. So to sit down and have to paint your army, which doesn't necessarily have to take that long. It can, but it doesn't have to. And then to have to find time to learn your rules, which can be like, I'm sitting here looking at my rules that I need to play on TTS. I have a stack of books like this big, right? That is actually a bit of a deterrent, I think, to women playing the game. And then to actually have the time to sit down to play a 3 to 4 hour game when you're just getting started. It's hard for women to find that time. Like, I do understand, and that's why I'm like all about Kill Team. I think Kill Team is like a great way to get women into the game. Like, in general, there's like 5 stratagems maybe that you need to know, maybe like 8 stratagems, and then a few rules. It is a bit crunchy, but you only need like 10 models too. So, but I think Warhammer 40K, that like amount of time sink, I think it might always act as a bit of like a barrier to entry for some women.
Yeah, especially women that are doing the majority of the housework and the kids. It's the one thing too I've tried to explain to a few of the people as I try to learn this. Like, I'm an open book. I'm 41. So, I don't have those years behind me like a lot of my male buddies where they were flipping through these books as teenagers and stuff, and that background knowledge. It is so much to absorb from scratch. So yeah, I think when maybe you're right, see the hobby evolve from younger women getting in the same way the boys did.
Yeah. I think it's incredibly important to encourage anybody who wants to do the game. Mm-hmm. But I think it's really important to encourage the young women getting into the game. Like, if you want to diversify competitive Warhammer, young women, I think that's where it is, right? Because if you've gone from 8th into 9th, or did you just start in 9th?
I started in 8th.
Okay, so
I was just figuring it out when it switched.
Yeah, but you can kind of see how, like, going from like one rule set to another, there's so much like carryover that it's not like you're learning a brand new rule set. So, like, on top of that, the guys that we're playing with have probably been playing since like 3rd edition or whatever. So, like, they've at least had the chance to learn the tactics side of things, like how to position your models on the table. Maybe they don't know it's called this, but like how to do zone defense and stuff like that. Like, they've actually, throughout their 10 to 20 years of experience, figured out that stuff that has nothing to do with the codex. Because there's a lot in wargaming that doesn't have anything to do with the codex. The entire movement phase, with like the little idiosyncrasies, a lot of that you can master that just by putting models on the table and seeing, like, how far do I need to move to ensure that unit can't move through here, or like, how do I need to turn my models so that I can make sure that I am on this objective. That so much isn't so much dependent on your codex. That's just experience moving models, really. Mm-hmm. But for new women coming into this hobby, they might not have that, right? So for us, our first stepping stones into the hobby are just like a little bit harder than they are for dudes who've been playing even a different rule set, right? And that goes into that mental resiliency.
And I think the other thing too is, if we want to see more young women come into the hobby, there's a lot of barriers that need to be broken down to provide more comfort to women coming in. There's a lot of unintentional hostility towards women, and there's people who don't get it. And I've heard stories from dads who sent me messages on forums after reading what I said and saying thank you. My 13-year-old daughter's trying to play. She went into a workshop, and the first thing that happened is some dude put down like an uber sexualized Slaanesh army right in front of her and was super weird about it. So there's some other things that need to kind of be dealt with so that more women at a young age feel comfortable coming into the hobby and feel welcomed into it. And as a sisters player, the next guy who says to me, oh, of course you're paying sisters because you're a girl, and rolls their eye and forgets that basically every other army out there for the most part is instantly male relatable and really no different. So
I'm somebody who I don't need to feel represented in my models, but I am somebody who recognizes that is really important to a lot of people, right? Yeah. So Sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you. It's an identification thing that brings somebody in. Like, I'm playing Space Wolves now too. I don't need everything to look like girls, but I know they're very strong. But yeah, to a female, if you're flipping through things, that might catch your eye when it's something that you can actually identify with. And I think there is something to that. So yeah. Well, I feel like we've touched on a lot of really great topics, and I could talk about this for hours and hours and hours, but is there any sort of like closing statement that you want to leave? Maybe tell women who are thinking about playing the game for the first time, or...
Yeah, I mean, just get out there and have fun with it. There's so many wonderful women to connect with out there. I mean, you get onto the forums and connect via Instagram. If any woman has a question or is feeling nervous or whatever, I am completely open and more than happy to chat with anybody. You can hit me up anytime. I just like to see more women feel comfortable in the hobby and more women feel welcome. And yeah, it would be great to see more women out there. So I'm there to help if anybody needs anything, and just be loud and don't take any bullshit.
Yeah, and if you can't be loud, just come find me.
Yes, I'm happy to be loud for people who, not everybody wants to be loud. And that's the other thing, is it's not your responsibility to answer back to everything. You choose what you're comfortable with. And if there's something you're not comfortable with, 100% agree. I'm happy to be the loud person.
I'll do it for you. I'll get pleasure out of it. I'm like, I'll be your attack dog. Don't worry about it. I got this. Yeah.
But Tanya on it.
Yeah. Anyway, we're going to call it there. Thank you so much for being on the show today. It's been a pleasure having you.
Yes, thank you for having me. It was lovely.
So I want to know, do you think men and women approach competitive gaming differently? Leave a comment down below to let me know what you think. As always, like, share, subscribe, and hit that bell. It really does help the channel out a lot. Don't forget, I stream twice a week on Twitch. I do a morning show with Scary on the Scarcast Twitch channel, and I do daily updates to Instagram, and I would love to see you all there. So until next time, everybody, be nice and roll dice.